Well, hello good people. Part 2 of messing around with this Lycoming GO-145, but before we get stuck into that, I want to show you something else. My friend Pete broke his dipstick.
Oh, that's torn it. I think I've bent me tube.
Anyway, Pete and his merry men run an Chief up at Bodmin. I'll try and put a picture up on the screen. It's got an A65 Continental. They've just changed the sump from a short neck sump, which takes a dipstick like this, to a long neck sump, which, as its name implies, has a longer neck and therefore needs a longer dipstick. And unfortunately, the dipstick that came with their sump broke. It broke here, just under the first rivet. Anyway, they tried to find another one. A few pleas went out on the internet and nothing turned up. So I suggested they handed the lot to me and I'd repair the thing, which was quite nice. It was raining yesterday afternoon. So I hid in the workshop and made a repair, bit of hacksawing, cut out a new length to replace the broken bit of the dipstick, and turned a couple of rivets up out of some mild steel in the lathe, all very easy. I found some copper rivets, so I put 3 copper rivets through to hold the replacement piece of dipstick on, and it is the right length. I'm pleased with that, and I'm going to take it back to the airfield in a moment. It can go back on the airplane because it's quite a nice day today, and there's no point in anyone being grounded unnecessarily. The point is not the repair, that was quite fun to do, but how incredibly corroded and filthy the top of the cap was with, well, I suppose it's water from condensation after the engine shuts down. Of course, this thing sits like so, and moisture goes up into the cap, of course, condenses over time, and it's quite acidic and it corrodes everything like hell. Anyway, I bought 3 of these caps home in total, and they were all quite badly corroded. The tops of the dipsticks corroded, and it sort of made me think, if I had one of these, I'd never thought about it before. I had one of these on my Champ years ago, never caused a problem. But when I took them apart, all 3 of them were very worn. This is the bit that actually locks onto the filler neck. It's got sort of 2 ears on it. Now this one is absolutely knackered. It's almost worn through twice, and in fact the ends are broken off as well. They're not difficult to take to pieces. So I think if you've got a small bore Continental, you haven't taken one of these apart, maybe you have. Maybe I'm teaching Granny to suck eggs, but it's really worth doing. They come apart very easily. The spring does 2 things. It actually holds the whole shebang together. So you just push it on, turn it through 1/8 of a turn, and it all locks together. And of course it's the spring that works the ears that makes this thing lock onto the filler neck. But I was amazed how knackered they all were. Maybe the thing with the ears is available. I did think one could make a press tool, and again, having a lathe and a big vise, you could just make a suitable press tool in the lathe and press out a new eared piece and then sort of trim it to size, maybe with a disc cutter outside to cheer your neighbours up. Anyway, I'm quite pleased with that repair, but more's the point, this had never really crossed my mind before, having run a small bore Continental in the past. And if one of those ears did fail, or the cap failed, because eventually they're just going to not grip the filler neck anymore, you've potentially got a bit of a problem, albeit one that can be solved with duct tape and a blind eye to get you home. I want to paint the Lycoming. These iron cases are a bit odd to get a nice finish on, but it needs some primer on it. The paint is sort of red oxide and silver and, well, all coming away. I did attack it with a wire brush a few days ago, which got rid of any loose stuff, so it just needs another coat of primer and some top coat. However, before I do that, I want to take the sump off, more for interest than any other reason. Curiosity may have killed the cat, but of course it was electricity that did for Ted Bundy. I thought it better to take the last couple of bolts out on the bench rather than have it dangling in midair in case the sump came free all of a sudden. Anyway, I'll just lift it up a bit and see if it comes loose. There we go. That's the dipstick there. Take that out of the way now. Well, that's the sump as removed. That's the hole for the dipstick. Obviously it's got a screen on there to catch anything with a part number. There's a little trough here, quite interesting. The camshaft gear runs in that, and obviously it can have a fair depth of oil in it, which means the gears always pick up oil and it carries up through the gear train, which is a good idea. And I guess that hole there is the oil pickup. Anyway, I'll take the screws out of the way and we'll have a look inside. There's only so much speeded up nonsense any of us can cope with. Let's lift this out the way. So, that's quite interesting. That's the spider cast in for the inlet pipes. Quite heavy finning on the bottom of the sump as well. It's all very clean. A little bit of oil in there, but it's all fresh oil. And yes, that's the oil pickup at the back. Use a screwdriver. You can see the hole there. That's the pickup. There's no screen on the pickup. But more interestingly, if you look through these baffles here that are cast in, there's a hole through there, so the oil can run, I guess, well, it can always level out, and I suppose it tries to keep oil in the pickup all the time so you don't get oil starvation during unusual attitudes. Anyway, that's all rather nice. Very nicely made. Fantastic piece of pattern work from the foundry. I'm going to upend that into a plastic bucket, just to get all the excess oil off it, and then give it a bit of clean up. Well, here's the underside of the motor. You can see the camshaft there. Unlike some of the later Lycomings, this camshaft doesn't share lobes. So it has 8 lobes, you see 2 for each cylinder. And they have chilled cast iron followers, much like most other engines. There's 3 cross bolts here that hold the 2 halves of the case together. The oil pickup is here. It all looks very nice and clean and tidy inside, and I've had a closer look. I can't see anything debris wise. It's all locked up properly, so it really does look like quite a good motor. You might hear the sound of torrential rain. I've got the shed door open just to get a bit more light in. Of course, I wasn't meant to be instructing today, but it's pouring with rain because it's June. I'm running out of exciting things to show you. Even the gasket looks all right, so I'm just going to clean it and put the sump back on. This is an IRAN, as my American friends will call it. Inspect and repair as necessary. Not the other sort of IRAN, running around in your pyjamas shouting death to the West. The sump is on and tight, and I've put the motor back in the cradle that it came with. The reason why is I'm going to put the propeller, that dreadful sawn off test club, on it now, and pour oil in the top, a couple of quarts or so, and then we'll rotate the engine gently and see if the pump primes and oil comes out the side of the conrod journals. we're pretty much ready to go. The only thing I haven't done is block off the feed for the oil pressure gauge, which is around the back there. I squirted a load of oil with an oil can, actually quite a lot, back through the pump. I hope it went into the pump and the gallery and has primed the pump. If you own a small bore Continental, you'll know that these pumps can quite often lose their prime. Really a problem if you've got a worn case. Of course, this is basically a brand new engine, so I'm expecting the pump should prime up okay. Anyway, the hole needs blanking off. I don't have an MTP fitting, but I have the handle of a paintbrush, which is nicely tapered, and I reckon it'll screw in there. It's a Saturday afternoon bodge after all. There we are. That should stop most of the oil coming out. Right, I'll move you a bit closer. Let's see what happens. Yes, there's definitely a lot of oil come out of here now. And yeah, oil around there. Yeah, definitely. Look at that number 4. And that didn't have oil poured over it by me with the jug. Nope, that's definitely working. Oh, that's good. Yep, the front main bearing here is all wet as well. And that wasn't anywhere near where I poured the oil. So the oil's definitely going around the system. Well, with the oil system proved, it's time to start bolting some ancillaries on. Before I do that, I'm going to dollop a bit of paint on. I found this very expensive tin of paint on the shelf. It came from Traeger Mills years ago. I think the label is pre-decimalisation. Anyway, it'll do for tidying up the silver a little bit. I'm not going to paint the barrels or the heads. And then we'll get on with some ancillaries next time. Of course, lots going on. Still working on Fred next door as well. Permit time on the Aronca and the thruster. All manner of other stuff. But as always, thank you for watching.